The days are getting longer, the sun is shining brighter, and summer has finally arrived. This time of year also comes with a host of diseases and conditions that we need to safeguard ourselves from heat strokes to dehydration and waterborne diseases. Being aware of these illnesses, their signs and symptoms, how to prevent them and treat them can help you spend your summer days safe and healthy. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez. Welcome to MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. The high temperatures from March to May can increase the risk of catching certain diseases, but they don't have to stop you from taking advantage of the summer months. The best approach is prepare and take the necessary precautions while you enjoy the season. To tell us more about this, we're joined here today with Dr. Michelle Angela Tan Reyes. She's an internal medicine specialist and consultant at Asian Hospital and Medical Center. Now, the Department of Health warns against a few summer-related illnesses in the Philippines. Can you tell us more about these diseases?
During summertime, the DOH warns us to be more scared of the summer diseases, which includes sunburn, food and waterborne diseases, and heat stroke.
In the past few years, the Philippines has experienced several outbreaks of food as well as waterborne diseases. Now, let's remind our viewers, Dr. Michelle, what are food and waterborne diseases ba? And what are the most common types dito sa Pilipinas?
So usually food and waterborne diseases are diseases we get from contaminated food and water. So they're especially high in the summertime because of the warm and humid weather. Actually is a good fertile environment for bacterial overgrowth. So there's a lot of bacteria and viruses, toxins, and chemicals that contaminate the food. In the Philippines would be cholera and typhoid and other bacterial diarrheas.
So yung contributing factor dito, yung init, ano? Yung init when our food or something we drink is exposed to this heat and humidity. Bakit kaya? So our viewers can have a better understanding how to treat these diseases is if they know where it comes from. How does it arise?
So usually when we leave our food out in the open, they're usually okay for a few hours. But when it's summertime, when it's very, very hot, bacteria can grow so fast and the food spoils easily. That's why a lot of people get food poisoning.
Now, these food and waterborne diseases will most likely lead to diarrhea, which is reported by the DOH as one of the 10 leading causes of morbidity and mortality in the country, particularly among children. But it's actually entirely preventable as well as treatable. Now, Dr. Michelle, what happens kapag isang tao ay nagkaroon ng diarrhea?
So, diarrhea is defined as loose stools of usually more than 3 times a day. It can be accompanied by just mucus, but some diarrhea can be accompanied by blood. It's more dangerous for children. As you've mentioned, it's one of the top causes of death in children during summertime. Also, it's dangerous for elderly people because usually their bodies cannot cope up with such dehydration.
Now, what are other possible signs ng dehydration that our viewers should be wary about? When should they be more concerned about seeking professional or medical health?
Patients with dehydration are going to complain. Well, some of them may not complain, no, but their relatives or their mothers can attest to sunken eyeballs, loss of skin turgor. Some patients would have decreased urinary output as well. And that's very dangerous for everyone.
Now, Dr. Michelle, when it comes to treatment naman, anong klaseng treatment ang pinakakaraniwan na ginagawa niyo sa isang taong dehydrated or those suffering from diarrhea?
So usually the first aid for diarrhea or dehydration would be, as you've mentioned, to drink lots of water. It's really rehydration. Catch it early. But some patients can succumb fast and are really very dehydrated that they can't do intake on their own. So they are admitted in the hospital and they are given IV rehydration. With regards to the diet, we advise the patients to avoid dairy, oily, spicy food.
really quick, do you recommend the viewers taking antibiotics on their own kapag meron silang diarrhea?
That's a very good question. So some diarrheas, most diarrheas are actually self recovering, and antibiotics are not needed, especially for children. But then again, we can do other blood tests, or if the diarrhea persists for more than 2 days, we can opt to take antibiotics. The blood test I'm talking about is the complete blood test. From there, we can actually see, is this more of viral or bacterial? But if it's more bacterial, that's when we take the antibiotics.
Now, Dr. Michelle, could you please explain what electrolytes are at kung bakit kailangan itong i-replace? At home remedies na pwede nang mag-replace ng electrolytes?
Electrolytes are very important because they keep our body healthy and they keep us healthy, no? And mostly when we have diarrhea, they go out of our system as well. That's why we advise patients to do the ORS, oral rehydration salts. The reason we give the ORS, or the electrolyte replacement, would be a lot of patients with diarrhea really don't have the energy or don't like to take anything, to drink or eat anything. But if you want to give them something, yun na yun, something with electrolyte replacement.
That's very good advice. Now, if you're experiencing severe and constant diarrhea, don't leave it untreated. But treating it on your own can also make it worse, so consult your doctor as soon as you can. Now, prickly heat, or a heat rash, is a summer disease you need to protect yourself and your children from, especially here in our country. The scorching heat can make you even more susceptible to those heat rashes. We'll discuss this after a short break. We're your connection to healthcare on MedTalk Health Talk, only on CNN Philippines. A common rash among children, but some adults can get it too. It's not a serious condition in general, but it's uncomfortable as well as very itchy. We're here to help you prevent prickly heat and give you the treatment options available. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez. Welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk, where your health comes first. Most people will blame the redness from the sun or sunburn, but prickly heat can also be the culprit. To talk more about this, we have Dr. Marivi Dizon, pediatric dermatologist and consultant at the Makati Medical Center. Hello, Dr. Marivi. Thank you for joining us. Now, what's the difference between sunburn and prickly heat?
So sunburn is the effect of the ultraviolet rays, and of course it's brought about by prolonged exposure to the sun, and it creates an inflammation or redness on the skin. And the longer you stay under the sun exposed, then that is going to create an erythema dose that will be of excess on the skin, and the skin will now become very angry, very red, very edematous, and it will lead to sunburn. Prickly heat or heat rash, or what we term as bungang araw, because of the heat, and we're in a hot, humid country, a person will sweat, and because of some circumstances under the skin, that there must be some blockage that's going on the ducts where the sweat are supposed to go out through, then that blockage is now going to create the sweat to get out into the skin the wrong way.
Dr. Marivi, why is this more common sa mga bata?
Because they're the ones that are very active. They're the ones that will run around always.
But the good news is that prickly heat usually disappears on its own, but there are treatments and remedies available to those that get heat rashes often. So let's start with prickly heat. What's the most common treatment for this if it doesn't go away on its own?
If we're going to take the principle of how to handle prickly heat, then we have to give some good aeration or good ventilation inside the house, or try to control the sweating of the person. It's totally impossible to tell the person don't sweat, but we can again temper down the temperature in the house, like put on open the windows, make sure there's good ventilation, doing cold towel or cool towel sponge baths will be also good enough. And also, it was mentioned, it was emphasized by Dr. Michelle a while ago, there's nothing like drinking lots of water, so that also helps cool down the body temperature.
Okay, really quick, Dr. Marivi, how about sunburn naman? What's a good first aid treatment for sunburn? Yung sobrang pula na, masakit na, nakatulog under the sun, what should they do?
You know, that can be considered as an emergency as well. But number one, there has to be a hospital facility around for severe sunburn. Topical corticosteroids will be very helpful. At times, one needs to take oral steroids to temper down quickly that severe sunburn. But
Okay.
why look for a sunburn when you should protect yourself by putting on a good sunscreen, a broad spectrum sunscreen, 30 minutes before you go out into the sun?
That's right. Always get the advice from your healthcare provider or your dermatologist when it comes to treatment for anything in your skin. Now, the most serious form of heat injury is a heat stroke. We need to protect ourselves from this condition. We'll go through the ways after a short break. You're watching Med Talk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. Stay with us. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and you're watching Med Talk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. Searing temperatures have been recorded during the summer months in the Philippines. And consequently, the Department of Health warns against the dangers of heat stroke, a condition that occurs from prolonged exposure to high temperatures where their core temperature just keeps on rising. Dehydration, it's the most common among the elderly, and if left untreated, can cause serious damage. Fortunately, there are many ways to prevent a heat stroke. With our guests, we'll discuss the ways. With us, Dr. Marivi Dizon, pediatric dermatologist, and of course, Dr. Michelle Angela Tan-Reyes, our internal medicine specialist. So a heat stroke occurs from too much exposure to high temperatures. But Dr. Michelle, what happens to our bodies when we go through a heat stroke?
It's actually considered a medical emergency. It's when the patient's body reaches above 40 degrees Celsius as core temperature already, and that's very, very dangerous. So what can happen to a patient with heat stroke? I said it's dangerous because the patient can actually have cold, clammy extremities. They can have fast and weak pulses. The patient can already have dizziness, confusion, disorientation, and some would also have seizures. So this increase in core body temperature is very fast, and the patient's body cannot actually handle it. That's why all the organ systems in the body will react to it.
Okay. Now, if a heat stroke is caused by our bodies overheating and that temperature that was mentioned by Dr. Michelle is at 40 degrees, what are some of the conditions that will push someone's body to reach that high of a core temperature, Dr. Michelle?
Well, aside from fever, staying in the sun for too long actually predisposes the patient to have a heat stroke. The heat stroke doesn't occur immediately. It actually occurs in stages. So the patient can have heat cramps initially, and then the second stage would be heat syncope or fainting, and then the third one would be heat stroke. It would be from staying in the sun or high temperature too long. Some patients need not be in very high temperature, but very high physical training or activity under heat for quite a time for them to have heat stroke.
Yes, and these summer months, especially this heat during the summer, can hasten that process of increasing the body's core temperature. Now, Dr. Marivi, when it comes to the proper attire, when it comes to these months where a lot of heat is present, a lot of our viewers may think that it is better to, expose more of their skin to dissipate the heat. They'll wear sandal, they'll wear shorts. Is this the proper attire when exposed to the sun?
Yes, it is. You have to wear light clothing. Cotton would be a good material to be wearing, especially this hot summer months. Even if you're wearing sleeveless shirts, but once you see, especially in children, if you see them already getting disoriented, they're looking nauseous, they're having vomiting, they're complaining of headache, they're having they're breathing fast, then those are also signs that the kid is also getting into a heat stroke situation.
Yes, that's good advice. Now, anyone can be affected by heat stroke, but there are those who are more at risk of developing heat stroke. Dr. Michelle, can you explain why the elderly and the children are more susceptible to heat stroke?
Children and elderly have different immune systems. So children are still upping their immune system. Elderly are already downing their immune system. So the adaptation to changes in body, especially changes in core temperature, are very slow compared to healthy or young individuals in the middle age group, no. But also we have to be careful. Even if in the middle age group, a lot of patients can actually have heat stroke because they forget that being exposed to extreme temperature is very detrimental to health.
Okay, now, Dr. Michelle, what is the first aid response that they should do?
So what to do first would be to remove the heat. So you get out of the heat, go to the shade. If you can go to an air-conditioned room, as Dr. Mariby has mentioned, better. But if not, just go out of the heat and go to the shade. Remove clothes that add padding so that you will be more cool. And of course, the first thing to do is actually hydrate with water. I agree that water is the best fluid to intake to prevent heat stroke, because other beverages actually have something that can actually add to your dehydration status.
Remember, heat-related illnesses are usually preventable. They shouldn't stop you from enjoying everyone's favorite time of the year. Dr. Michelle, what are some of the practical tips to prevent these summer diseases and more?
The first and foremost I would recommend to cover for food and waterborne diseases and for sunburn and heat stroke would be to always hydrate. Always drink water, but remember to drink clean water. So hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. If you're not sure of the quality of your water, you can actually boil for at least 2 minutes, no, to make sure it's clean. Then also, with regards to food, to avoid food poisoning, you have to be planning about storing your food well during the summer and to reheat them well during the summer.
Dr. Mariby, your short message for our viewers when it comes to their skin health during the summertime.
For this summer, you may wear light clothing, but don't forget to cover yourself up as well, because this summer season, a lot of insect biters are out there. Mosquitoes are vectors that bring diseases. So you need to make sure that your environment is clean. And if you are having itchy rashes, you'd better, if you can't control it yourself, you'd better seek the advice of a doctor, because if you don't take care of that itchy skin, you are bound to have skin infection because you will be having a lot of wounds on your skin. So visit your doctor, seek proper advice.
Very good advice. Thank you to our internal medicine specialist, Dr. Michelle Angela Tan Reyes, and our pediatric dermatologist, Dr. Mariby Dizon. Thank you very much again for joining us today. We appreciate your time very much. We're here to help build a healthier future for you. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and thanks for watching MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines.